Go to sea, and the longest we were ever at sea was 7 months when we thought we were going to go to war in Laos at the time, and which was very, I don't think people here knew what was going on.
What was going on?
Well, this was a precursor to Vietnam, and we assembled, I was gone for 7 weeks, which is the longest I've been out of town. And that's when the wives all support each other, and I have to admit, I was a little scared. You know, we had 150 ships assembled in Buckner Bay in Okinawa, which is quite a sight. And if you consider that today's Navy is less than, I don't know what we have now, but I know it's less than 450. And when you consider 150 ships assembled in one area, it's an unbelievable sight. Unless you've seen it, you can't appreciate it. The other unbelievable sight I saw, by the way, which just came to me, was I saw the hydrogen bomb blast, test blast over Johnson Island.
Oh, gracious.
And
How did
that
you see
was
that?
unbelievable.
What was it like?
Well, if you ever see it, you'll realize that it's inconceivable that we would ever use, or that anybody would ever use a hydrogen bomb.
And what was your vantage point?
I was about 250 miles away.
Gosh.
And what happened was, I was on a ship.
What year was this?
Pardon?
What year was this?
62.
Okay.
And people had you were expecting this, you know, people had their cameras out, you know, they're going to take a picture. But what happened was, it wasn't like you could look off in the distance and see some sort of, you know, explosion. What happened was that the whole sky lit up. It was like somebody, like you were in a room and someone turned the light on, and suddenly, the sky, it was like day. It just, boom. It was a little yellowish, and everybody sort of dropped their cameras and just kind of looked around. There was nothing to take a picture of. That's 250 miles away, and that color stayed, the sky stayed lit for at least an hour.
Good gracious.
And it just changed colors. It changed colors to from yellow to green, eventually to purple, and then you saw the what they call the aurora borealis streak across the sky. You see something like that, and you realize the power of hydrogen bomb, and they're bigger ones now. So that was a clincher for me.
Wow, that's amazing.
I almost became a pacifist.
And then going back.
Work, and my father suggested that I might consider the Navy. He had wanted to join the Navy near the end of World War II, but then the fighting was all over. He ended up joining the National Guard, and but he always had that sense of, you know, what about the Navy? So I went to the recruiter, and there was a picture of Neil Armstrong on the moon, Captain Neil Armstrong on the moon, about less than a year earlier, and he says, that's one of our guys. And it's like, I could go to the moon with the Navy? I thought just around the world. But I was able to get signed up, and I ended up going on a 12-week Southern California vacation, which they call boot camp. And I was in the Navy, and there were the protests, March on Washington. And I'm stationed on an aircraft carrier in Norfolk, Virginia, which I made my duty stations all on the East Coast with the expectation I would go and be deployed in the Mediterranean. I would not be involved in the war at all. And about 2 weeks before our ship was to deploy to the Mediterranean, the orders were changed, and the ship was going to sail for Vietnam.
Oh, good gracious.
And it was one of those challenging times, a crucible a key moment.
Mhm.
A good friend of mine, a Minnesotan,
Mhm.
decided not to go back to the ship,
Yeah.
missed movement as his protest as a conscientious objector. And um, the weekend, I can recall talking to my father about the deployment, and he said, you signed a contract. And so for the sanctity of the contract, I went with the ship, and we worked long hours, and the airplanes that were flying off the aircraft carrier were returning empty.
Yeah.
And we were on station, Yankee Station, the South China Seas, for some of the fiercest bombing in the war.
Really?
Over the Christmas holidays in 1972.
Good gracious.
And I don't think about that often. It's a distant,
Mhm.
behind closed doors, locked away
Yeah.
sort of memory. But the end of all of it is I left the Navy after 8 years, and left with a very employable skill. Went to school on the GI Bill, and finished my college degree, and the Navy continued. Take great care with the veterans. Spend time with veterans, and invite them to crack the door a little bit, to talk about their wartime experiences, so that you can feel what they felt, so that if there's a question of what involvement does the United States engage in, that we understand that we put lives at risk of our own young people as well as veterans groups. If we send young men and women into harm's way, when they come back, we have a tremendous responsibility to take care of them, at whatever the cost. The greatest duty is to them. They went following orders, and some of them came back broken, and we need to care for them and care for their families too.
And what was your and what about your greatest life lessons learned, through the experience?
I love this country. I love this country. And